Welcome. In front of me I have the Xiaomi Redmi 13C, which is a budget device from, well, Redmi obviously. And today I'll do an unboxing along with a quick look at the device itself. So, I just get, straight into it. Okay, so as you've seen in the box, we just have the instructions and a charging cable, well, and obviously the phone itself. Now, once it boots up, we'll be able to actually see the entire screen, which is a 6.7-inch display running a 720p resolution, so more precisely a 720 by 1600. It is also a LCD IPS display with a 90 Hz refresh rate and a typical brightness of 450 nits that goes up to 600, boasting an 83.7% screen to body ratio, with probably the biggest bezel being at the bottom right here, and 260 pixels per inch. Let me just choose some language. Good enough. Now, continuing on into the cameras at the back, we have a 15 megapixel wide sensor, then we got a 2 megapixel macro, and then we got even crappier one, which is a 0.08 megapixel auxiliary lens. I'm not even sure what that is supposed to be. By the looks of it, just a garbage lens that adds a count to it, which I honestly hate how manufacturers do this. So let's be honest, the only camera that you'll be using on here is the 50 megapixel wide sensor. Anything else outside of that is just dog shit here. There is no reason to ever use that. The 2 megapixel macro, even though it's a dedicated macro lens, it means a fall, considering that the 50 megapixel wide sensor will be able to capture a higher resolution quality photos with a 2x zoom, meaning you're already cropping into it, than the dedicated macro lens, which therefore the macro lens is absolutely useless, defeating the purpose of its existence on this device. And same goes for the auxiliary lens, whatever the heck is that supposed to be. It literally sounds like bullshit jargon to justify adding garbage on this device that is unusable just so it looks like it has 3 cameras, because apparently that became a standard, and it's unacceptable to have less than that. How about just don't have one at all? Crazy idea. And that being said, on a budget device like this one, where this costs about 35 bucks, I would consider cutting costs on shitty cameras that aren't usable to be a very justifiable reason. Who would have thought that actually subtracting cameras would cut away from the cost? Crazy. Anyway, let's just continue on outside of the cameras, or well, there's one last one at the front, and this is an 8 megapixel sensor. Now with both for the front or back, you can shoot at 1080p 30 frames. That's the maximal video resolution and the frame rate. Now, next thing will be the internals. So this device is being powered by a Helio G85 and comes with either 4 or 8 gigabytes of RAM, depending, guess which option you take. So we have, or actually there's 3. So running down, the lowest end spec version of this is the 128 gigs of storage with 4 gigs of RAM. Then you have 128 with 6 gigs and 256 with 8. Now, when it comes down to it, I would recommend going for the middle option, the 128 and 6. The additional storage, the RAM that this device will have will make switching between apps and just using it a little bit more smooth, and obviously that adds to the experience, which I highly recommend just picking that. It will be a little bit more expensive, like probably 10-20 bucks, but it's I would say a justifiable cost, considering having not enough RAM will make using this device feel sluggish, and obviously that's not something that you would like. Now, outside of that, the storage doesn't really matter. 128 gigabytes of storage, built-in one, is already pretty good, and additionally you can also expand it further using an SD card in here, so that should be all good. Now, continuing on with this device, we do have a 5000 mAh battery in here, which is pretty good, and we also have 18 watts fast charging speed on here, though we didn't have a charger included in the box. Apparently Xiaomi is now ditching chargers as well, even though they kept them for so long, and they also added some really good chargers that were really pushing the charging speeds to like 120 watts on the phone, which is pretty insane. But this one is basically on the same level as something that you'd expect from a Samsung, which, that being said, that's not a compliment. Samsung, when it comes down to battery and charging, is absolutely atrocious. So 18 watts charging on here, not the best, but luckily we do have a Type-C charging port on here, which obviously makes this a little bit more versatile, meaning that wherever you go you should have very little problems in terms of charging your device. But something tells me if Xiaomi could have, they probably would have added a micro USB on here, because this is about $130 device, so it is at the very bottom of devices, and the only reason this device doesn't probably have a micro USB is because legally they're not allowed to do that anymore, as long as they want to sell their devices internationally, like for instance Europe, where this law has passed. So that's why most of the devices from now on, even iPhones, will include a Type-C charging port. So that's basically all the info for this device. It is a budget device in itself, so there's not much, I guess, positive to say about it, also not much negative. I could pick every negative part of it, but like I said, at the end of the day, this is a budget device, so it would not be a very fair justification of, well, the existence of this device, if that makes sense. So it is cheap because it is meant to be cheap, and on here there is not very much in terms of justification of the cost, outside of the display, which is a 90 Hz display. Sadly it's just a 720p, but we also do have a big battery, which is additionally pretty nice, and a reasonably sized storage that starts at 128 gigabytes. So like I mentioned, in terms of RAM, I recommend picking up the 6 one over the 4. So all in all, it seems to be a solid budget device. Keep in mind, this is budget, like at the almost lowest end, so you're not getting much in terms of features here. Obviously there are devices that do have some features that you might be interested in by paying just a little bit more. That being said, devices for like 200 bucks, which compared to this one is a little bit more, about like what, 40% more, will have significantly richer feature set compared to this one. So if you don't mind having something that functions better, faster, and basically in every kind of aspect is just better device, I would recommend maybe spending a little bit more on a something like a start of a mid-range devices that is around $200 mark. That will give you a significantly better user experience, which obviously if you're planning to use this device for a longer period, I would probably I recommend just saving up a little bit more if that is the possibility, and then getting a better device that will last you longer and also feel nicer to use. So anyway, with that being said, hopefully you found this video helpful, and if you did, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and thanks for watching.